I still remember the night everything began. It was Christmas Eve, that quiet hour between dinner and midnight when the whole world seems to hold its breath, waiting for a miracle. And then the doorbell rang 3 times at the gate of my property. It wasn't a normal hour, or normal weather, or a normal sound. It was different. It felt as if someone wasn't just knocking on my gate, but on my destiny itself, asking permission to enter and unravel everything I had buried so carefully. My name is Evelyn Davenport. I'm 63 years old, with gray hair and hands that still tremble when I hold my afternoon teacup. I've spent the last 3 years trying to survive the emptiness my husband's death spread through this enormous house. Every room an echo, every hallway a memory, every Christmas an open wound. When I lost my companion of 40 years, I lost my ground too. Richard was my north, my compass, my safe harbor. He knew me better than I knew myself, and he guarded my secrets like precious jewels, with care, with reverence, never exposing them to the light. After he passed, I truly believed life had no surprises left for me. I thought my days would be nothing more than this: tea in the morning, solitude in the afternoon, and memories at night. But that Christmas Eve, the surprises were only beginning. Before I go on, I want you to know something. If this story touches your heart, if you recognize yourself in any part of it, or if you simply want more women to find stories that remind us that life never stops surprising us, please subscribe to the channel now and leave a like. It's not just a button, it's a hug from you, a way of saying we're walking together as we search for the best in life. And it helps me keep bringing stories that make us feel alive, no matter our age. Thank you, truly. When I stepped outside to answer the gate, the cold wind hit my face like an unexpected slap, stealing my breath. The garden was covered in a thick layer of snow that sparkled under the Christmas lights my neighbors had hung on their homes. Wreaths on windows, stars and bells on doors. Everything I saw felt so empty without Richard beside me. And there, curled up against the iron gate, trembling under a coat far too thin for that biting cold, stood a little girl of about 7 years old. Her brown hair was messy from the wind, her cheeks were red from the cold, and her eyes, my God, those eyes, so wide and frightened they seemed to take up half her face. Beside her, sitting with the discipline of a soldier, was a skinny mutt with caramel and black fur, pointed ears, and an old scar above his left eye. When I approached, the dog stepped forward, placing himself between me and the girl, his chest puffed out, his eyes locked onto mine. It wasn't aggression, it was pure protection. It was as if that animal had been born with a single purpose: to defend that child. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted. The girl lifted her face. Her lips were almost purple. I came to see you," said the little girl. I froze. To see me? That made no sense. I had no close family, no grandchildren, no children in my life. My days were populated only by ghosts and memories. "My angel. Maybe you're confused," I murmured, glancing around as if expecting someone, parents, guardians, any adult, to emerge from the snowy mist. "Where are the people who take care of you?" She hugged a worn-out backpack to her chest, faded fabric, rusty zippers, patched-up straps. "No, I need to give you something." "Something that's yours," said the little girl. My heart stumbled in my chest. "Something that's mine." And then I noticed it wasn't just the cold making her fingers shake. It was fear. Real fear. Deep, old fear. The kind that makes a child look far older than she should. My chest tightened. I looked into those enormous eyes, at that protective dog, at that backpack held so tightly, and something inside me, maybe maternal instinct, maybe old guilt, maybe simple humanity, just gave in. I opened the gate. The dog entered first, sniffing the stone path that led to the front door, moving with a confidence that gave me chills. It was as if he already knew that path, as if he had walked it before, in another life, in another time. His steps were too certain, too resolute. The girl followed, holding my hand with the delicacy of someone afraid she might disappear if she let go. Her fingers were cold, tiny, fragile. A wave of protectiveness washed over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades. Once we reached the living room, I lit the fireplace. The flames began to dance, casting warm shadows over the book-lined walls and framed photographs. I made hot chocolate, the same kind I used to prepare for Richard on winter nights, and poured it into a mug painted with little reindeer. The girl accepted it with both hands, but didn't drink. She just held it, as if the warmth of the mug were the only comfort she needed. The dog positioned himself beside her, but his eyes never left me. It was an intelligent gaze, almost human, as if he were evaluating me, deciding whether I deserved their trust. After a few minutes of silence, only the crackling fire and the wind howling outside, the girl lifted the old backpack and placed it on the coffee table. "It's in here," said the little girl, her thin voice cracking. "But I can't open it. You have to open it." The dog approached, put his heavy paw on my knee, and looked at me with an intensity that made me tremble. It felt like he was asking me, no, begging me, to trust him. I grabbed the zipper, but before I could move it even a centimeter, the girl gripped my wrist with surprising strength for someone so small. "If you open it," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes, "your life will change. Again." That word, again, echoed in my mind like a church bell. How did she know my life had changed once before, and in such a devastating way? How did this unknown child know things I had never told anyone except Richard? My heart began racing. My breath grew short. "Who sent you here?" I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. "Who gave this to you?" The girl lowered her eyes. "A woman. She said it was time for you to know the truth," said the little girl. That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. I looked at the backpack. I looked at the girl. I looked at the dog, who seemed to know my house better than any visitor ever should. I looked at the snow falling outside, the Christmas lights blinking softly, the portrait of Richard on the wall, smiling, always smiling, protecting me even in death. And then, with hands trembling so much I could barely hold the worn fabric, I pulled the zipper. The metallic sound echoed through the entire room, slicing the silence like a knife. Inside the backpack was a large envelope, yellowed with age, thick, sealed with old tape that was beginning to peel. And on top of it, clipped with a rusty paperclip, was a tiny hospital bracelet, the newborn kind, with faded blue ink letters. My whole body went cold. I picked up the bracelet with trembling fingers. The name was almost unreadable, erased by time. But the date was there, clear as day. December 24th, 1979, 46 years ago. That same Christmas night, the bracelet slipped from my lap. My hands couldn't hold anything anymore. My chest rose and fell quickly, as if I'd run miles. The girl stepped closer, her big eyes fixed on mine. "This is yours. My mom said it was," said the little girl. Her mother. The world tilted. "And now I want to ask you, and please, be honest with me. Do you believe there are secrets so deep they can stay buried for decades? Yet somehow the universe always finds a way to bring them back. Tell me in the comments what you think. I'd truly love to know." My fingers ran over the envelope as if it were made of glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. I didn't want to open it, God knows I didn't. But at the same time, I felt that if I didn't do it right, then my soul would never find peace again. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was an old copy of a birth certificate. The paper was yellowed, the edges creased, moisture stains marking the corners. The certificate was incomplete. Only one field had been filled out. Mother's name, Evelyn Grace Davenport. I felt the ground vanish beneath my feet. A wave of heat rose through my chest, followed by a deep nausea. The very same nausea I felt 46 years ago, on Christmas night of 1979, when my life split into two paths and I chose the easier one, the cowardly one. The girl stepped closer, those enormous eyes studying me with disturbing maturity. She said you never meant to hurt anyone. That you were just scared, said the little girl. It felt like my heart shattered inside my chest. Who told you that, sweetheart? I asked, my voice more fragile than I had ever allowed it to be. The lady in the portrait, the girl answered simply. I went pale. I felt the blood drain from my face. There was only one portrait in this entire house that I had kept locked away for more than 20 years. One I had sworn never to look at again. A portrait hidden in a room I hadn't entered in decades. The girl shouldn't know about it. She couldn't know. The dog, who had remained seated and quiet until then, suddenly stood up. He began walking around the room, sniffing every corner, every piece of furniture, every shadow, as if he recognized all of it. And then he stopped in front of the blue door in the main hallway. That door, the door I never opened. The door behind which lay the room I had turned into a tomb of memories. He hit his paw against the wood twice, hard, certain, determined, as if he had come exactly for that. The girl let go of my hand and walked toward the dog. She placed her hand on the doorknob, a doorknob I hadn't touched in decades, and looked at me over her shoulder. She said I needed to remind you where everything began, said the little girl. I wanted to ask who she was, but my voice didn't come. My throat was tight, my eyes burning, my legs barely holding me up, because I knew. I knew even before admitting it to myself. I knew because that hospital bracelet, that incomplete certificate, that dog who seemed to know my house better than I did, that girl speaking of hidden portraits. Everything was a bridge to a story I had spent my entire life trying to burn, bury, forget. But now, it was knocking on my door, literally. I can't go in there, I whispered, feeling hot tears run down my face. It's been so long. The girl turned fully toward me, and then, with a gentleness that broke my heart open, she walked back, took my hand again, and said, She said you're strong, stronger than you think. She. I took a deep breath, once, twice, 3 times. And then, with the girl holding my right hand and the dog walking beside my left, like escorts of fate, I walked toward the blue door. I turned the knob. The door creaked as it opened, releasing a smell of mold, of time frozen, of life suspended. The hallway light spilled into the dark room, slowly revealing what I had left behind. The room was untouched, exactly as I had left it, cream wallpaper with delicate drawings of teddy bears and moons. A white wooden crib in the corner, with a mobile of stars and clouds still hanging above it. A rocking chair near the window where I used to sit and dream. A small dresser with drawers full of tiny clothes that were never worn. And on the opposite wall, covered by a white sheet, the portrait. The dog walked straight to it and sat down, looking at me as if saying, It's time. The girl let go of my hand and stood by the door, giving me space. I approached the covered portrait, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My fingers touched the sheet. It was dusty, rough. I pulled. The fabric fell to the floor like a sigh. And there she was, my daughter, my little Catherine. No, it wasn't a real photo of her. I never had that chance. It was an oil painting I had commissioned years later, based on dreams, imagination, and sorrow. I painted her as she would have been at 5, curly brown hair, green eyes like mine, a mischievous smile, wearing a little red Christmas dress. It was the only way I found to keep her alive. Even if only in paint, in canvas, in fantasy. I fell to my knees. Violent sobs burst from my chest, tearing up my throat. 36 years of pain, guilt, regret, unanswered questions. All of it came up at once. I cried like I had never cried, not even when Richard died, not even when I lost my parents, because this pain was different. This pain was made of choices. I felt small arms wrap around me. The girl knelt beside me and hugged me with all the strength her thin little body could gather. The dog rested his head on my shoulder, as if he, too, felt my grief. "She said you did the best you could," whispered the little girl in my ear. "She said she forgives you." I pulled back, holding the girl's shoulders, looking deep into those eyes that suddenly seemed so familiar. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Who is your mother?" The girl smiled, a timid smile, but full of light. "My name is Sophie, and my mom is Catherine," said the little girl. The world stopped. Everything stopped. My heart, my breath, time itself, the snow outside, the flames in the fireplace. Everything. "Catherine?" I repeated, barely able to form the word. But she's alive," Sophie said simply, "and she wants to see you." I couldn't process it. I couldn't think. My mind was a storm of questions, impossibilities, miracles. Catherine was alive. My daughter, the daughter I gave up for adoption 2 days after she was born. The daughter I never held again after that first moment in the hospital. The daughter I spent 36 years trying to forget, was alive. And she had a daughter. And that daughter was here, in front of me, holding my hand. "Where?" I managed to ask. "Where is she?" Sophie looked toward the window. The snow was still falling, but now it seemed different. It looked magical. "She's waiting," Sophie said. "She said that if you wanted to, if you were ready, she'd come see you tomorrow, on Christmas." On Christmas? The day I lost her, the day everything began, and now, the day everything could begin again. I looked at the portrait on the wall, at the imaginary Catherine I had created. And suddenly I realized I didn't need that fantasy anymore, because the real Catherine was alive, and she wanted to see me. I held Sophie's hands with all the tenderness I had saved for decades. "Yes," I whispered, tears falling freely. "Yes, I want to, more than anything." Sophie smiled, a smile so much like the one in the portrait that it made me laugh and cry at the same time. The dog wagged his tail for the first time since he arrived. And outside, through the snow-covered window, I swear I saw a star shine brighter than all the others, as if the universe were saying, "It's time, Evelyn, it's time to forgive yourself." And for the first time in all these years, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. Hope. That night was the longest of my life, and at the same time, the shortest. After Sophie told me that Catherine was alive, those 3 words that changed everything, the 3 of us stayed in that room for hours. Me, sitting on the dusty floor. Sophie curled up in my lap as if she had always belonged there. And the dog, whom Sophie told me was named Copper, lying at our feet like a silent guardian. I wanted to know everything, every detail, every piece of the life I had lost. "Tell me about her," I asked, running my fingers gently through Sophie's hair. "Tell me about Catherine." Sophie lifted her face, her eyes shining with that pure kind of love only a child can have. "Mom is a nurse. She works at a hospital in Boston, taking care of newborn babies. She says it's the most important job in the world," said Sophie. My heart tightened. Newborns. She dedicated her life to caring for babies, giving them what I couldn't give her. "Is she kind?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Very," Sophie replied with a smile. "She sings when she cooks. She makes hot chocolate with marshmallows when I'm sad. And she always says we should be grateful, even when life is hard." Tears streamed down my face. She had become an incredible woman, without me, despite me. "And is she happy?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Sophie grew quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. She says she is, but sometimes I wake up at night and hear her crying. And when I ask her why, she says she's fine, that they're just memories, said the little girl. My chest ached as if something sharp had pierced straight through it. Memories. Memories of me. Of rejection. Of abandonment? Sophie, I said softly, turning her face so she would look at me. Why did she wait so long? Why only now? Sophie lowered her eyes. She said she was scared, that she spent years trying to find you, but didn't know what to say. She didn't know if you'd even want to see her, said the little girl. Want to, I repeated, louder than I intended. My God, Sophie, there wasn't a single day I didn't think about her. Not one night I didn't wonder if she was okay, if she was happy, if she hated me. She doesn't hate you, said Sophie firmly. She told me that 1,000,000 times. She said you were young, that you were alone, that you did what you thought was right. I shook my head, sobbing. I wasn't alone. I had Richard. But I was so afraid. Afraid I wouldn't be good enough. Afraid I'd ruin her life. Afraid of being judged. I was so young, Sophie. And I was sick at the time, with no stability to raise a baby. I don't know if you can understand, but I chose the easiest path. It wasn't easy, Sophie said, wiping my tears with her tiny hands. Mom said you carried it your whole life, that it was never easy. She was right. It never was. I spent the next minutes telling Sophie about that Christmas of 1979, about how I discovered I was pregnant, hiding it from my parents for months, about how Richard, my high school boyfriend, the boy who loved me more than I deserved, promised he would stay by my side, about how my parents, when they finally found out, gave me no choice. I told her how I couldn't imagine raising a baby at 17, how terrified I was, how I worried about what people would say, so I chose adoption. I chose to give her a real family, with prepared parents, with love, with stability. And you did, Sophie said. Mom had a wonderful family. Her adoptive parents, my grandparents, were amazing. They loved her like she was theirs from the very first second. I smiled through my tears. They passed away 3 years ago, Sophie explained softly. It was a car accident. Since then, it's just me and Mom and Copper. I looked at the dog, watching our conversation with almost human attention. Was Copper theirs? He belonged to my grandpa, said Sophie, scratching the dog's head. When he died, Copper got so sad he stopped eating for days. But then Mom brought him home with us, and he kind of became our protector. He knows when we're sad. He knows when we need comfort. It's like he understands everything. Copper wagged his tail slowly, as if agreeing. Was he the one who brought you here? I asked. Sophie nodded. Mom said that when she finally decided to look for you, Copper started acting weird. He kept staring at the door, like he was waiting for something. And then, last night, Copper practically dragged me outside. It was like he knew the way. A shiver ran down my spine. I didn't believe in coincidences, not after that night. And why did you come alone? I asked, brushing Sophie's hair from her face. Why didn't Catherine come with you? Sophie fell silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. She said she needed to know first if you would open the door, if you'd want to know. She said that if you sent me away, she would know that maybe it wasn't the right time. So I left her a letter saying I was coming to see you. Copper and I left while she was at work. She won't know I'm not home until tomorrow morning, said the little girl. My heart shattered all over again. How could she think I would send her away? How could she believe there was even a chance I wouldn't want to see her? I held Sophie tighter. You're going to tell her yes, that I want to see her, that I always wanted to, that there is nothing in this world I want more than to see her. Sophie smiled. That bright smile that reminded me of the portrait on the wall. I'll tell her, said the little girl. We spent the rest of the night in the living room by the fireplace. I made more hot chocolate, found old blankets in the closet, and the three of us, me, Sophie, and Copper, curled up on the couch while the snow kept falling outside. Sophie told me stories about Catherine, about how she made heart-shaped pancakes on Sundays, about how she sang off-key but with so much love that nobody cared, about how she always let Sophie choose the Christmas decorations, even if they were over the top. And me? I absorbed every word as if it were water in the desert. At some point in the early morning hours, Sophie fell asleep in my lap, her breathing soft and steady. Copper stretched out at our feet, snoring quietly, and I stayed awake, staring at that child, my granddaughter, wondering how life had given me a second chance. When the sun began to rise, painting the sky pink and gold, Sophie woke up. She stretched, rubbed her eyes, and smiled at me. "It's Christmas," she said, her voice full of childlike joy. "It's Christmas," I repeated, feeling something new growing in my chest, something I hadn't felt in so long I had almost forgotten its name. Happiness. Sophie jumped off the couch and ran to the window. "She's coming today. I know she is." My heart raced. Today. Catherine would come today. I spent the next hours in a state of panic and joy at the same time. I cleaned the house, hung up lights, prepared a Christmas turkey, put on Christmas music, wore my best dress. A simple navy blue one, Richard always said, made my eyes look brighter. Sophie helped me, dancing around the kitchen with Copper chasing after her, and for the first time in years, that house didn't feel empty. It felt alive. And then, exactly at noon, we heard the sound of a car pulling up. Sophie ran to the window. "It's her. She's here." I froze. My legs couldn't move. My heart beat so fast I thought I might faint. My hands trembled uncontrollably. Sophie ran back and grabbed my hand. "Come on, Grandma. She's waiting." Grandma. That word struck me like lightning. I took a deep breath and let Sophie guide me to the door. I opened it, and there, standing in the snow with a red coat and long brown hair blowing in the wind, was her, Catherine, my daughter. She had my green eyes, my face shape, my way of tilting my head when nervous, and when our eyes met, everything I had held inside for 46 years finally broke free. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice cracking, and I ran. I ran through the snow, through the lost years, through the pain, the guilt, the love that was never spoken. And I held her, with everything I had. Have you ever lived a moment when you felt the universe was giving you a second chance? If you share your story in the comments, I would truly love to read it. We stayed there, holding each other in the snow, crying as if decades of locked-up tears had finally found their way out. I felt her body trembling against mine. Or maybe it was me trembling. It was impossible to tell where I ended and she began. "Catherine," I whispered into her hair, breathing in deeply as if trying to memorize even her scent. "My Catherine. I was so scared," she said between sobs. "So afraid you wouldn't want to see me. That you'd be angry. That." "Never," I cut in, pulling back just enough to cradle her face in my hands. "Never. Do you hear me? There hasn't been a single day I didn't think about you. Not one night I didn't pray you were safe." She let out a watery laugh. "I thought about you too, every day, especially at Christmas." My heart tightened. "I'm so sorry, Catherine. So sorry for—" "No," she interrupted, placing her hands over mine. "You don't need to apologize. You gave me life, and then you gave me the chance to have a good life, with parents who loved me unconditionally. You did what was right." "But I abandoned you," I said, my voice breaking. "I chose the easier path." Catherine shook her head firmly. "You chose the harder one. Mom, Can I call you Mom? You were 17. You were alone and scared. And even then, you carried me for 9 months, brought me into the world, and then made the most courageous decision anyone can make. You put me first. I couldn't stop crying. I don't feel brave. I never have. But you are, she said, smiling through her tears. And I spent my whole life wanting to tell you that. We heard small footsteps crunching in the snow and turned to see Sophie and Copper running toward us. Sophie jumped into her mother's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "I knew it would work," Sophie exclaimed. "I knew it!" Catherine laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "You were right, sweetheart, as always. But you left home without telling me. Didn't you, young lady? Don't ever do that again, okay?" said Catherine lovingly. Copper wagged his tail and barked, a joyful, lively bark, and we all laughed. The tension, the fear, the pain, everything melted away in that magical Christmas snowfall. "Come inside," I said, wrapping my arm around Catherine's shoulders. "It's cold out here. Please, come in." I made Christmas lunch. We went in together, 3 generations finally reunited, and the house that had been so silent for so long suddenly felt full of life, laughter, and voices. During lunch, Catherine told me her story, how her adoptive parents, Linda and Thomas Wilson, were incredible people who never hid from her the fact that she was adopted. How, at 10 years old, she began asking questions about me. How Linda always told her that I loved her very much, but that I hadn't been able to care for her at the time. "They raised me with so much love," Catherine said, her eyes shimmering. "I never felt rejected or unwanted. But there was always this curiosity, this desire to know who you were, what you were like, whether I resembled you." "You do," I said, smiling softly. "You have my eyes, my crooked smile when you're nervous. And Sophie has my nose." Sophie touched her nose and giggled. "Really? Really?" I said, gently squeezing her cheek. Catherine went on to tell me that after Linda and Thomas died in the accident, she finally decided to look for me. But it took her 3 years to gather the courage. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of hurting you by showing up. Afraid you'd built a new life, and I'd be just a painful memory you wanted to forget." "You were never a memory I wanted to forget," I said firmly. "You were the memory that kept me alive all these years." Catherine reached across the table and took my hand. "Tell me about him, about Richard." I smiled, feeling warm tears roll down again. Richard was everything. My first love, my only love. He was with me when you were born. He held my hand through the entire labor, and when I chose adoption, he said he would support me no matter what. "He knew," Catherine asked softly. "He always knew, and he carried that secret with me. We married when I was 20, and he never, not once, made me feel guilty for the choice I made. But I know it hurt him too." "Did you have other children?" I shook my head. "No. We found out I couldn't have any more children after you. It was a complication from your birth that the doctors didn't notice in time." Catherine covered her mouth, her eyes filling again. "So I was the only one?" "You were. You are." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of people absorbing decades of tangled pain and love. Sensing the weight in the room, Sophie jumped out of her chair. "Can I show Grandma the drawings I made of her?" Catherine smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." Sophie ran to the backpack still in the living room and returned with a worn notebook. She opened it in front of me, revealing page after page of childish drawings. A woman with gray hair smiling, a big house with Christmas lights, a dog running in the snow, and in the center of them all, 3 figures holding hands. "This is us," said Sophie, pointing to the last drawing. Me, Mom, and you. I drew it before I even met you. My heart burst with love. It's beautiful, Sophie. You're very talented. Mom says I inherited it from you, Sophie said proudly. I looked at Catherine, confused. From me? Catherine smiled. I found you, Mom. Online. I found your art gallery. I saw your paintings, and I realized where Sophie got her talent. I was speechless. I had kept a small online gallery for years, more hobby than profession. I never imagined Catherine would find it. I saw the portrait, Catherine said softly. The one of the little girl in the red dress. That was me, wasn't it? I nodded, unable to speak. It's beautiful, she whispered. You imagined me exactly how I looked at that age. It's almost eerie. I dreamed of you, I admitted. Every night, I dreamed what you might look like. And then, I started painting. It was the only way to keep you close. Catherine stood, walked around the table, and hugged me so tightly I felt as if I were being put back together, piece by piece. I love you, she whispered in my ear. I've always loved you, even without knowing you. I love you too, I answered, my voice tight with emotion, more than words can express. We spent the rest of the day together. Catherine showed me photos of her life, her nursing school graduation, her wedding. She married at 23 but divorced 3 years later. Sophie's birth. Each picture was a piece of the life I had missed, but also a celebration of the beautiful life she had built. When night fell and the Christmas lights glowed inside and outside the house, we set up a beautiful Christmas tree in the middle of the living room. Then the three of us sat together on the couch, Catherine on one side, Sophie on the other, and me in the middle. Copper sprawled at our feet, finally at peace. You know what's funny? Catherine said, looking at the Christmas tree. I always thought finding you would fill a void inside me, but now I realize it wasn't a void. It was just a space waiting to be filled with love. I smiled, squeezing her hand. I felt the same. I spent years thinking there was a hole in my heart, but it was just space. Space for you, for Sophie, for this moment. Sophie yawned and rested her head on my shoulder. Can I ask you something, Grandma? Of course, sweetheart. Are you going to spend every Christmas with us now? I looked at Catherine, who smiled with tears shining in her eyes. If you'll have me, I said softly, I'll spend every Christmas, every birthday, and every ordinary and special day with you. We'll have you, Catherine said firmly, not just at Christmas, forever. And there, in that living room filled with candlelight and Christmas lights, with my daughter at my side and my granddaughter in my lap, I felt something I hadn't felt in 46 years, wholeness. It wasn't just joy or peace or happiness. It was the feeling of being complete, of finally being forgiven, of finally being free. And when I looked at Richard's portrait on the wall, I swear he was smiling brighter than ever, as if saying, I always knew you'd be happy again. I always knew. The days after Christmas were the most magical of my life. Catherine and Sophie stayed with me the entire week. We transformed that house, the same house that had been a mausoleum of painful memories for so long, into a home full of life, laughter, and love. We cooked together, watched old Christmas movies wrapped in blankets, and every night before bed, Sophie asked me to tell her stories, not made-up ones, but real stories from my life, from Richard's life, from what it was like growing up in a different time. And I told her everything, without fear, without shame, without secrets. One afternoon, while Sophie played in the snow with Copper, Catherine and I sat in the kitchen drinking tea. The winter sunlight streamed through the window, casting golden patterns across the wooden table. Can I ask you something? Catherine said, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. Anything, I replied. Why did you never try to find me? The question hit me like a punch, but it was fair. It was the question I always knew would come. I took a deep breath. I did try, twice. The first time was when you turned 5. I was obsessed. I needed to know if you were safe, so I hired a private investigator. Catherine looked at me, surprised. And he brought me photos of you. You were in a playground, smiling, wearing a pink dress with butterflies. Your adoptive parents were with you, and they were utterly devoted to you. Not just loving, devoted. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I realized you were happy, truly happy, and that if I showed up, I might confuse you, maybe even hurt you. So I decided that loving you meant letting you go. And the second time? Catherine asked, her voice wavering. It was on your 18th birthday. I thought, now she's an adult. She has the right to know me if she wants to. So I wrote a letter, a long one, explaining everything, who I was, why I made the choice I did, how much I loved you, and I asked the investigator to deliver it. I never got that letter, Catherine whispered. I know, I said gently, because at the last minute, I tore it up. I was terrified you'd hate me or think I was trying to invade your life after all those years. I just didn't have the courage. Catherine reached across the table and took my hand. I wouldn't have hated you. Never. I know that now, I said, squeezing her hand. But back then, the guilt was so heavy I couldn't see past it. I convinced myself you were better off without me. But you were never without me, were you? Catherine said softly. You carried me with you all these years. Every day, I said, especially at Christmas. Every Christmas I wondered, where is she now? Is she happy? Is she opening presents? Does she have people who love her? I did, Catherine said, smiling through tears. And now I have even more. We sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands, letting decades of unspoken love and pain flow between us. You know what scares me, Catherine said after a while. What? That I almost gave up on finding you. Sophie and I talked about it so many times, and the night before she ran off to come here, I sat in my car for almost an hour, debating whether I should just forget everything. My heart tightened. What changed your mind? Sophie, Catherine said simply. She told me, Mom, if you don't decide, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering and regretting it. And I don't want you to live like that. A 7-year-old was braver than I was. We laughed together, wiping tears from our cheeks. She's special, I said. She is, Catherine agreed, and she already loves you like she's known you forever. We looked out the window at Sophie, who was making a snow angel while Copper tried to imitate her, rolling clumsily in the snow. The scene was so pure, so full of joy, that my heart could barely contain it. I want to be part of your lives, I said suddenly, turning to Catherine. I don't want to be just a Christmas visitor. I want to be there, for birthdays, graduations, bad days, good days, everything. Catherine smiled, that radiant smile that lit up her whole face. We want that too. Actually, I was thinking, Sophie starts 3rd grade in January, and Boston is expensive, very expensive. I can barely afford the rent on our apartment. She hesitated, as though afraid to finish. What are you trying to say? I asked gently. Do you have room for us here? Not forever, just until I get on my feet financially. I know it's a lot to ask and... Yes, I said, firm and without hesitation. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Catherine blinked, stunned. Really? Really. This house is enormous. It's been empty for years. And more importantly, it was always yours. I was only keeping it for you. Catherine burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of relief, of pure joy. She stood up and hugged me so tightly I could hardly breathe. Thank you, she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a second chance." "Thank you," I replied, "for being brave enough to find me, for giving me the chance to be a mother again, a grandmother." That night, we told Sophie about the plan to move in. She literally jumped for joy, running around the house choosing which room would be hers. She picked the one facing the backyard oak tree. Then she stopped, looked at me with those big, serious eyes, and said, "Grandma, does that mean we'll spend every day together?" "Every day," I said. "And can I help you cook?" "Always." "And will you teach me how to paint?" "It would be an honor." Sophie hugged me so tight she almost knocked me over. "This is the best Christmas of my whole life." "Mine too, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Mine too." Over the next days, we began planning the move. Catherine would need to return to Boston to sort out things at work and at the apartment, but she promised to return by the end of January. Meanwhile, I started preparing the house, cleaning rooms that hadn't been touched in years, buying new furniture, painting walls, and for the first time in decades, I felt purpose. It wasn't just about filling the void Richard had left. It was about building something new, something beautiful, a family. On the last evening before Catherine and Sophie left for Boston, we made a special dinner. I cooked Richard's famous roast, the one he used to make on Sundays. Catherine made an apple pie, a recipe from her adoptive mother, Margaret, and Sophie decorated the table with candles and paper flowers she made herself. During dinner, Catherine lifted her glass. "I'd like to make a toast. We all raised ours. Sophie had grape juice in hers." "To second chances," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. "To families who find each other after lost years. To mothers who make impossible decisions. And to grandmothers who open their doors and their hearts without hesitation." "To second chances," we echoed together. Our glasses clinked, and the bright, crystalline sound echoed through the room like a bell announcing a new beginning. After dinner, we sat in the living room by the fireplace, our favorite spot. Copper was sprawled on the rug, snoring softly. Sophie was curled between Catherine and me, almost asleep. "Grandma?" she murmured, her eyes drifting shut. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think Grandpa Richard is happy now? Up in heaven?" My heart tightened. I looked at his portrait on the wall, that gentle smile, those eyes full of love. "I think he's more than happy," I said softly. "I think he's radiant, because he always wanted this for me. He always wanted me to be happy again." "Do you think he's proud of you?" Sophie asked. "I know he is," Catherine said, squeezing my hand. And it was true. I could feel it. I could feel Richard there with us, smiling at the three of us. I could feel his approval, his love, his joy that I had finally allowed myself to live again. When Catherine and Sophie left the next morning, it was hard, but it wasn't a sad goodbye. It was a hopeful, "See you soon." I stood at the door, waving as their car disappeared around the bend, and for the first time in so many years, I didn't feel that familiar weight of loss and regret. I felt hope. I walked back into the house, which suddenly felt less empty, and went to the blue room, the room I had kept locked for so long. The portrait of Catherine was still on the wall, but now it wasn't a painful fantasy. It was simply a reminder of a time when I didn't know what the future would hold. But now I knew, and it was beautiful. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the portrait, sending it to Catherine with a message. She was beautiful in my imagination, but you're even more beautiful in real life. The reply came almost instantly. "Love you, Mom. See you soon." Mom. The word I never thought I'd have the right to hear. And there, in that bright room filled with memories, I finally allowed myself to believe it. I was a mother. I was a grandmother. I was loved. And this Christmas, this miraculous, magical, impossible Christmas, had given back everything I thought I'd lost forever. I looked out the window and saw snow beginning to fall again, soft and gentle, covering the world in a pure white blanket. And I thought, Christmas really is a season of miracles, because I was living one. What about you? What was the most special Christmas miracle you've ever experienced? Or what miracle are you still hoping for? Share it with me in the comments below. I love reading your stories. And if this narrative touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and leave your like. It helps other women find this story and remember that it's never too late for second chances. Thank you for being here with me.